Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice.
Rose Zefferino is the owner of Z Domus Designs, a builder's interior design firm located in Pennsylvania. Rose began her career in home building as a project manager right out of college and then moved over the years into more of the design position. Here, she focused on selections and assisting other builders in creating a smooth running process that served both the clients buying and building the home as well as the builders responsible for the construction. In this episode, Rose shares with us how her design and selection management process has been honed based on her beginning in construction. We discuss the differences in custom builds and community management, as well as hiring for these different but very similar support positions. This episode also helps continue the conversation around the fact that there are many facets to design and that finding your area of expertise and then doubling down there can be really profitable.
Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice.
Hey, Rose, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Michele. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here and talk all about your business and how you have come into design and how your business maybe looks a little different than others that are in the industry. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's definitely different than I think what most people would consider with design in home construction and home design.
So before we get started with all of that, Rose, I would love for you to share with our listeners a little bit about yourself and tell us about what you did prior to starting your own firm.
So I actually have started off with a construction background. So my degrees are in business management and construction management. So right out of undergrad, I started working for a national home builder, and they were building communities where you have set floor plans and a customer can buy and customize and kind of personalize it within a program. So I started off being a project manager there. So I was in the field managing construction. I was actually the only woman doing that at the time, which was actually had its own challenges, but it actually created a lot of opportunities for me. So I started off with that. Really helped me understand like how a house is built. So, I managed it from foundation through, the windows being cleaned, so it was kind of everything in between. So while I wasn't actually like swinging a hammer, I kind of saw all of the phases that were involved. So I did that for about 4 years, then went into costing. So I into that same builder, went into costing. So then I learned more about how much things cost, commodities versus local expenses. And that's really when I started getting into getting more knowledge about the cost of finishes. So like plumbing fixtures, lighting, all that stuff. So I did that for about a year and then went into sales. So then same company again, but then in a different department. So now I'm selling the houses that I know how to build and how much it costs to build. So I think I approach sales in a very different way because I can talk through the technical parts where maybe some people were unable to do so with the background that I had. So after doing that for about maybe 7 years total, all in, I was approached by somebody that I had met actually in college, who started his own construction company in Pennsylvania on the main line. And he hired me to manage his custom homes and renovations department, which kind of culminated all that experience that I had at the other builder and just became one position where I was able to manage his staff and grow that part of his business. From there, I think I naturally fell into design a little bit more just because I was exposed more to the custom the custom world where I wasn't like in a box of here are 10 options that you can choose. And I was really being, going out there and finding anything that a client needs. There's a lot of affluence where I am, so that there's a lot of exposure to a lot of different materials. So I had done that for about 3 years and developed, a reputation around the area. This was a unique position within a building firm because not a lot of building firms in the area had somebody like me, male or female, just didn't have anybody like me who was kind of helping a customer guide them through the design process. So that's when I realized that there was actually a void in the business, in our industry, where there wasn't somebody like me in other builders. From there, I developed a business plan where I could be the outsourced construction designer or new construction or renovation designer, where builders of maybe medium to small scale could hire me and my firm to do that selections guidance, where we can sort of be a builder's rep for the client, but at the same time help the client design through all their selections for the finishes of their homes. How Z Domus Design started.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple questions. Number one, your undergrad is in business, right? Not in construction management. That's what your master's is in. So I told you before we went online, both my boys have construction management undergrad degrees. So for them to go in, and they're both on the commercial side, but for them to go, and one's a project management and the other does the costing and the budgeting. So it's interesting that I have one in each of those roles. But they came out of college knowing that they wanted to go into, that part of construction simply because that's what their degree was in. But your undergrad was not in that. Your undergrad was in business. What made you decide not only to go into construction, but to accept a job, of course, where they were, I don't want to say it's like they're taking a chance as if you couldn't do it, but they were also kind of trailblazing to put a woman in a position that by and large in that area did not have a woman in a position like that. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so it's funny because I went to college thinking I was going to be like an investment banker. I was going to, be in Wall Street and I was going to do all this stuff. And then the minute I had my first finance class, I was like, I don't think I could do this like for my entire life. And what the migration sort of happened where I started realizing that I really liked seeing a product for my work. So it wasn't just that I was going to make people money or I was going to do like, I wanted to see something. So I originally got really interested in event planning. That was sort of my version of seeing what you could, what your work was. So that initially started my thought process. But at the same time, like it was sort of more of like a hobby than what I thought my career could be. And my parents, when I was in high school, had got me a drafting table because they noticed that I was like tracing, like on trace paper, like tracing houses. Like I don't know if I even realized the connection until recently about how like there was actually like this underlying, I don't know, like love for that. Like I liked that so much. And I think what happened was, it was at a career fair and I started walking around. So I went to Cornell and they have a really giant career fair and they have several of them that happens as you start to get prepared to graduate. And I would just walk around to all of the different locations. And I just started to realize that I was migrating toward these houses, like all the companies that would come that were going to do home construction. Like that's where I started to kind of migrate to. And I joke around and say that when I interviewed for the company, in the panel, like, so they had, 4 or 5 people were scheduled for the same interview day that I was, and they were all women sitting there. And I feel like, and I remember thinking, I think I was duped. When I got there and I was hired and they were like, oh yeah, you're the first one. I was like, really? I have no idea.
Wow.
Like I had no idea that this was going to be some, trailblazing event. Yeah. But I just think it was sort of this unconscious almost
Yeah.
like desired, kind of direction for me to get into construction. And it really was construction first,
Right.
before it was design.
That's so interesting. My oldest, I can remember him drawing out plans for a bookcase and a desk combo, drawing out like just doodling, right? But drawing things out. And I remember my husband and I both said he's going to either be architecture, building, construct, something like we could see. We didn't know what
Yeah.
it could be, and we didn't want to say, here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And then I remember he thought civil engineering. And right at the beginning, he's like, I don't know that I could specialize in that one thing for the rest of my life, kind of the way you felt about finance. So it's interesting as a parent to look in and to see even just these little underlying things, with somebody else that, like you said, you might not even connect the dots on until later. And our
Yeah.
younger son was more of the builder thing. Like, not, I won't say more of, he was different. He was constantly putting things together, ignoring the box directions for Legos. And they both were like,
Yeah.
just doing these things. And we were both kind of like, they're drawn to those things. So I love that you now in hindsight can see where you were drawn into those things. And let's be honest, event planning, even though it is very different, it is about design. I mean, you are designing an event, you are designing a mood, you're designing, something that is getting ready to happen, the same way that we would design how you want to feel in your home or in your space. But I love that you came at it from very much a technical perspective, right? Like standing on site, watching the concrete pour, watching all the things that are happening, and really understanding the ins and outs. Okay, so you show up on the project, you're now building houses. How did you, I'm going to hope that they didn't take you straight out of Cornell with a business degree and throw you on site and tell you to build a house and hope that it was going to be okay. So I'm certain, I am crossing my fingers and toes. They say never ask a question you don't know the answer to, but I'm hoping I'm hoping really big here that they gave you some level of training before they put you on site, right?
Yes, they did. So I'm actually, I really credit a lot of my initial success to having very, very good mentors. So I was paired with a project manager who was a seasoned project manager. So you kind of shadow this person. So I was his assistant for essentially 10 months. So, so during those 10 months, I think it was like once every 2 weeks or something, they would pull you out of the field and have in classroom training. So they would train you every, every phase of construction.
So you're on the job training and then doing some classroom training as well to support the on the job.
So we had the full, the whole training program that I received was excellent. So, and I think that they did it in a way so that I actually still have the manual, and I've given it to my younger designers just so that they could read through everything that I learned, just because it's helpful just to understand, little things like, you can't just move a wall. Like if it's supporting something, then you can't just move it, or you can't put a niche on an outside wall because where's the insulation going to go? So there's different things like that I think just knowing a little bit of construction helps us manage the finishes for people. But I think I took the most out of my, in the field training because I saw things. So, and it was actually probably most valuable for me to see the mistakes so that you can see what do you have to think through so that I don't have to do that again.
Right. What precipitated that mistake? All right. How do we go back?
And I think one of the things that was very unique to me specifically, being a woman in construction, is that sometimes when mistakes happen and you don't schedule something, or let's say, I don't want to generalize and just say men, but let's say you forget to schedule somebody to help unload a truck. The guys would just unload the truck because they forgot to schedule it. I was in absolutely no position to unload a truck. I'm 5 foot nothing and I can't, I'm not strong enough to do that. So I had so much I had to do so much preparation and so much work ahead of time to make sure that I was never in that position for myself, because I never wanted anybody to think I couldn't do my job because of my physical limitations of what I could do. So that in itself also taught me just how to pre-plan for things.
All right. So I'm going to ask this question, and I hope I don't like anger anybody, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes in construction, residential and commercial, I
Mm-hmm.
have seen builders, primarily male, look at female designers or female project builders almost as if they're driving them crazy. And I think that some of that is because perhaps some of the designers that they've been around were not prepared and didn't have good systems and didn't plan in advance. And so things felt or came across as scattered or out of control, or like just not flowing in a way. It felt more like it was causing them injury or harm instead of assisting and helping in that process. Did you feel any of that in the construction piece? And I'm going to jump forward. Do you ever have to combat that or use that as a sales tool to turn it around another direction now in the new business?
Yeah, so I definitely felt it when I was on the construction side, because if clients have a friend who's a designer who has these ideas, and obviously there's a lot more trust in that relationship than there is in a newer relationship, like being a builder that comes in. So I definitely felt that, where you kind of have to work around a relationship, but also meet deadlines and stay on budget and all that. So I've definitely felt that. But on my side now, being the designer that comes in, I have absolutely been able to use that as a tool for my sales of my company, because I don't know of anyone. There's probably a handful of people in this area that I can think of that have had that type of career trajectory like I have, that can confidently tell a builder that I've spent most of my career building these houses. While I don't claim to be an expert like you are with building the type of houses you do, but I approach design with the knowledge that I want to make sure you can build it. Because I myself have seen what happens, and I have dealt with what happens when you work with a designer who doesn't account for that.
Right. Or
It's like
fully
form
understand the build process, so that it's more about furnishings than, or they create a finishing schedule, but it's late in the game. Like, you understand the timing. I think that is one of the bigger pieces there, is understanding the timing.
Mm-hmm.
I know even, I love project management. I love all that. And I remember years ago when we were redoing, in the grand scheme of things, a smaller project, we were doing a master bathroom and a master closet in our own home. And I remember hiring, interviewing contractors, hiring the contractor, making all of the selections, and actually buying everything and having it in my dining room almost on the day he started. And he walked in the house and he was like, what is all this? And I said, well, I know you won't get to it for a week or multiple weeks, but I have everything ready. Like, I knew what I wanted. I already had it. I will not be the one that holds you up. And so they loved that, because he's like, I've never had a designer like have everything that ready in his experience, right? So if they were upstairs working in the master and they needed something, they could run downstairs to the dining room, pick it up, and walk up there and check a measurement, or check where they needed to cut a hole, or do whatever they needed to do. And so it's the timing of all of that that is so important, and especially with building a full home. So you move from one area of building the house, then you move into the costing piece, which is, I love that too, because now you understand what things cost. And then you get hired away, where you're working on more custom homes that then kind of adds that bigger design element into the more, I'm going to say, mechanical work of building the
Sure.
home
Yeah.
and costing the home. So it's a little bit more of the aesthetic piece of it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
elevates your selections because you move from something that's more community driven into something that maybe has some community aspect, but also has a little more custom aspect. All right.
Right.
So we get you through all of that. That's like 10 years,
Yeah.
right? And then you decide to step out on your own. That's where I'm going to focus the rest of our time, is really talk about. So I wanted to lay the groundwork. Like, you are coming into this position having done it. So when you now are going in and selling your services to these builders, you're selling the service of, I've built a home. I understand, again, maybe not the exact home you're building, but I know enough to know how to support you and help you. So you have a sales message that
Yes.
comes across very differently than a sales message of, hey, let me come in and help make some selections for you. There's a deeper conversation that's happening.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, when you first started this, Rose, did you think that, well, what did you think when you first started it and you thought, I'm stepping out on my own? I don't want to put words in your mouth. You tell us, what did you think the business was going to be or look like? What did you see it as in that moment?
So, I was lucky enough to start my business with one big client. So I knew I was able to have a good foundation and consistent work for myself. And I think I thought I would have maybe one or two other people, other designers working with me, and that we would be like a small group that could help these smaller in scale mainline builders and help them and their customers. And I think I thought it was going to be, there was a need, but maybe there wasn't, I wasn't going to, I guess, how do I put this? I think I thought that a lot of builders already had a solution that might not have been a designer, but had a system to work
Right.
through.
Right.
And I'm sure a lot of them do. But what I very quickly found out, so I went from one client. Within 4 months, I hired my first part-time designer that within 4 months of that became full-time. Actually, even probably sooner than that, became full-time. But I went from one client to two pretty quickly through just a referral. And then within that first maybe 6 to 8 months to a year and a half, I gained like 7 more happened like very quickly. And then I was hiring. And then, so my just thinking I'm one or two with me just very quickly became something where I was like, wow, there is actually a way bigger need for this than I even imagined myself, when I started this. And it's been exciting. I remember when my first year, I was at the Home Builders Association, my local Home Builders Association, and my showroom won Best New Showroom for the year. And I remember even turning to my staff at the time being like, I just think we need one more and then we're good. And then that was like 2 employees like later, like, so
Right.
it's been super exciting. And I love that I've been able to find this niche in this area where it seems like we can service builders and service clients so that they have a better home building experience.
I love this very, very much because one of the reasons that, you and I wanted to do this podcast was to show that there's so many different ways to approach design. And there's nothing wrong with any way that we do it. If it's serving the need in our community and it's using our skill set that we're great at, right? Or that we've developed and that we enjoy, then that is okay. We talked about before, I think Katie Baldwin and I talked about that fear of missing out, or, she loves the project management, the window treatment piece, and somehow feeling like it wasn't okay to just like a piece of the overall, design, if you will. You are coming at it liking a different part of the process and really having your own systems built to be able to do that very, very well. So
yeah,
tell me this. When you started it, I'm certain that you pulled together all the processes and all the things that you've done, things that you saw in your past that had worked really well, things that you wanted to tweak and make different. How important is it to run the firm that you, because you have like what, 4 or 5 employees plus you, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so
Four,
this is much
four,
bigger
five,
than
yeah.
Rose with a part-time assistant. This is
Yeah.
a much bigger thing. And you and I mean, we work together, so we also know it could be a whole lot bigger than it is right now.
Yep.
We're just working on through the AIM process. We're working to
Yes.
scale it with intent and to make
Yes.
sure we're scaling at the appropriate rate, right?
Right.
So we know that there's still capacity in that, but I'm curious as to how important and how quickly you put systems into place to fill that gap that was existing between the builder and the homeowner in their process. How, they may have had a process, but maybe, like you said, it's definitely wasn't as robust as the one you created. How quickly did you create systems and processes to be able to fill that gap?
So in full disclosure, I'm probably still creating the systems to be able to,
Right.
to do all that. But because of my position before I started my business, I was sort of a one person show in terms of everything with the selection. So, every spreadsheet I created to organize myself and every checklist was sort of, I created it just for me, really, to keep track of everything. And so I was able to convert that into templates for myself and my designers to be able to work off of. And I am, maybe it's because of my background or just my personality. I'm very I write lists for everything. I prefer to be able to think through like from start to finish. So I spent a lot of time going through and saying, you meet a customer, you schedule appliances before count cabinetry, because you need to know the sizes of your appliance, so I went through and did all of the order that would make sense so that I could essentially train somebody to know the stuff that I know. So that's probably happened a little slower than it should have because it had to all come from my brain and into paper. But I think
Well, you also started off thinking that it wasn't going to be a larger firm,
right.
right? And so, in all fairness, first of all, a couple of things. We all hold information in our head. And so, people who tell me I don't have a process or a system, I call bull. You just have it in your head and it's probably not written down. I mean, we all have it. We even have the process to wake up and brush our teeth, but we wouldn't tell you that that's a process, but we have it. So that's one thing. And then the second thing I just want to point out, you said I'm probably still working on it. I actually think you should, right? We've talked about this, even in the AIM with intent. The conversation is that when we're building a business, just like we're building a home or any building, we're constantly working on some of the foundational pieces, because if you started your business thinking it was going to be you and maybe one person, the fact that it's now you and 4 or 5 people, that's a bigger foundation. We're building a bigger house, a bigger business, right, than what we had planned for, which means the processes that got you going initially might not be the max of the process to get you going longer term. So that iterative process of looking at your process is actually very healthy. I would rather hear that than, I built it and I'm done and I'm never looking at it again. That's a little scary sometimes, right? If we're not going back. So how has it been? Let me rephrase this. I'm going to jump around for just a second, but I know that you're working with many builders now. How important is it? And I think I know the answer to this. So, I'm always trying to be careful. How important is it now for you to work with builders that respect your process? Not just that you respect theirs, but that they respect yours for the role that you and your team fill.
Oh gosh, I learned this the hard way. It's super important. So obviously we are stepping into a role that in many cases the builders have never had before. Right. So similar to like what I was saying, that I was doing everything, that's what they were doing. So there is definitely I think there's first the recognition that they need somebody like us. Then there's the acceptance that they need to allow us to do what we do. And and there is a system to it so that we can get them the paperwork that they need when they want it. So I've definitely learned the hard way, where you realize that, for one reason or another, there's just not that release of trust in what we do.
Right.
Or we are a contractor of theirs. So while we might behave like we are, and we're a representative and might feel like an employee to some, we are a contractor. So I'm sure I've seen it in other cases where there has been this hesitation to give us everything, so
Right.
Of course, I try to mitigate against that by doing, confidentiality thing, everything, so that they feel like I'm not going out there and giving all their secrets to all my other builders that we work with. So there's obviously a lot of trust that they put in us, and we do it with them. And I think,
but they've got to be willing to merge processes.
They have to, yeah. And, I've got to say that in some cases, that some of the builders we work with have elevated my process, because I've seen something that they've done, which it's great. And we're able to service them, but then also improve ourselves just all together. And then there's just, on the converse side, we see processes that just don't work, that if they are willing, and luckily, I would say, like, I feel like my success rate's like 95%, is for the most part, we're able to combine our processes, whether it's the spreadsheets, whether it's the timing, or whether it's, how we what we offer to the client, we're able to do that so that we can merge. But what I find I'm working on now more than ever is, as we're growing and servicing more builders, I want to create the Z Domus process, so that
Right.
it is consistent across while the products are different and the offerings are different, the process is the same, so that my designers are not having to reinvent themselves with every new builder that we have. And I think we take that by seeing the best of everything, the best of all of our clients.
I know you and I have talked about this over the last year or so, about really understanding the why behind Z Domus and the values of Z Domus, and what that transfer of trust looks like. And I do believe you now have, you've learned the hard way, which, let's be honest, we all have learned something the hard way in business, and that's not a bad teacher, right? It's not a bad teacher. But I know that you've also had some where you started off thinking this was going to be a great builder relationship, and it was a kind relationship, but it was an emerged relationship. And then you probably had some where you thought, I'm not really sure about this. And then after you got into it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is really great. Have you taken what you've learned now from your why, your values, what's important, the ability to transfer that trust back and forth between both of you, the merging of process? Are you now using some of that as part of, if you will, a litmus test, or part of a interview process with the builders when you start to make sure early on? And are you creating some type of a boundary that says, like, let's try to build one house together and see if we can make this work, or two houses? Have you put something in there to know when to have an exit if it's not working for both of you, and how to eliminate the mistakes early on?
Yeah, I definitely think that my criteria, actually, when working with any new builder, really has very little to do with their volume. I don't care if it's we're gonna work together on 2 houses a year, or if it's going to be 50 houses a year, because ultimately the process is going to be the same for so that has no bearing, I think, on my decision on whether or not it's a valuable relationship. What I find was the most difficult in the beginning was when the builder was, a potential builder would only want to work with us on projects that either it was like it was not that we were their like designer of choice. Like, it was like wherever it made sense for them to use us, they would use us. And whenever it didn't, they would just manage it themselves. And what was difficult about that is, what was happening is we were getting the difficult ones. we were getting the ones that they knew were going to be, and I don't want to say, they were difficult for a lot of reasons. They could be difficult
Right.
because the time frame that they were trying to do could be difficult based on the client expectations or whatever it might be. There was a reason why that was the one that they decided that it was worth hiring. And that relationship is difficult because we're already we're already not in a even ground, I think.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that's sort of what I try to feel out. If it's a relationship that they feel like every client that they have, every one of their homeowners needs our services, or if they feel like they're going to be able to kind of decide which ones that are which ones work or not. I've also had one of the other ones is that we are a service that a builder can sell as part of their sales process. That's how they gain, they could say, you're going to work with a designer, you're going to, she's going to help you through the entire process along with us. So we can concentrate on building and they can concentrate on the design. So we're definitely part of their package. Any builder who doesn't want to present us as part of their package is a red flag to me. Because to me, that means that either they don't value the design process as part of their value add, or they don't, I'm going to end up with a conflict of interest if they're requesting that the client hire us and not the builder, because then it's like, who are we answering to? And that is where I've learned in the beginning where I used to allow that to happen. And now I don't, because it really puts myself and my designers in a bad position, because at the end of the day, the relationship started with the builder, but the client's paying us. Right. So that it doesn't feel right.
Right. And we always follow where the money goes. Right.
Yeah.
And so
right.
if the client's the one paying you, then it shifts your allegiance, if you will.
Yeah.
Kind of like the difference between, what is it, a buyer's agent and a seller's agent. Allegiances start to shift a little. Another area that I know that you and I have worked through is not just the idea of, moving you towards the client or towards the builder with regard of who's paying you or who's hiring you. And I know we've talked through some of the opportunities where you only got like the more difficult jobs from a builder, but we've also seen where some builders, early on wanted to not give you the full part of the process. So they might have been willing to give you all of their clients, but they wanted to kind of dip in and out instead of that full merging of the process. So then you could do 3 steps of your process, but not these 2, right? Which is kind of the thing on the full design side that irritates us with a homeowner who says, I want you to come in and design the whole space. And then they jump in and try to design around you. And that causes problems.
Yeah. Well, we work best when we can do what we can do. So like it hurts the process when, let's say when we're working with their customer and we're doing the selections meetings, we're going to the vendors, we're doing all that stuff. And and then we're stalled because now the builder's stepping back in and talking through what's included and this is the pricing and like they're going through and seeing all of the iterations, what we do. Like, I mean, all of us in our personal lives know how this works. If you design a kitchen, how many times are you going to change your mind? It's totally normal. It's part of our process. If you don't change your mind, you're going to regret something later, or because it means you didn't think through it. So when we are here so that we're going through all of those changes with the customer. But if a builder interjects every time, it stalls the process, but then it also really, really makes it very confusing for the client, because they're getting too many voices while they're trying to while they try to finalize something. And it's starting to, like, we're supposed to be their design advocate, right? So like they're supposed to come to us they should come to us as we can help them with the big picture of everything. But then if the builder's rep keeps coming in too, I think that we lose control of
and
the
it
process.
erodes trust. It erodes
And lose
trust for sure.
trust. Yeah,
Yeah,
because we can't we can't show what our value is in that
right.
case. Is we essentially at that point almost become paper pushers because we're just getting them to sign off on stuff at that point because
And that's
they're
not the value that you really have.
right.
So
So
let's move. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, so yeah, so that's definitely something that they've got to be able to trust that we can handle that, which, you know, we started off talking about how in some cases, I think builders have a negative connotation when they think about a designer. And that is the initial thing that we need to fight to be like, no, we're going to be more than just that for you. Or not even just that. We're more than somebody who's looking at pretty things all day. Like we are actually going
Right.
to help you get the product and get everything that you need when you need it.
And take a lot off their shoulders. I mean, most builders, commercial or residential, they don't want the homeowner in there
Mm-mm.
driving them crazy all the time.
Yeah.
Not just listen, we've all done it. I mean, when we built our home, I was over here and I know I drove those people crazy. I know I did. And it wasn't intentional. It's just, I didn't
Right.
have a designer. I was acting in that role or, using
Mhm.
other resources to do that. And so you're constantly just asking questions and you don't have that intermediary and there's nobody there to help you even just say, yeah, that's a good choice. Like you're not going to let somebody
Right.
put something in a house that's just ugly, right? It might not be your
Right.
taste, but you're still going to make sure that as a scheme, it runs through the house properly so that as the client is looking for affirmation in their decision-making process, you provide that for them. And it allows the builder to keep their head down and do the building part, which is what they really want to do. Most of them do not want to be pulled away from that.
No, and I think the other aspect, which I think is a huge advantage for homeowners, which I often stress at the first time I meet with them, is um, I don't work. We are not the builder, which means that if I tell you that something looks beautiful, it's not because I'm making $1 more on something. Like it's actually because it looks beautiful with this. So, I have no motivation on my side to make you choose. And I'm not saying that that's what builders do, but that there's
Right.
always
But
that
it's the
underlying,
mindset.
like they're selling me on something. Like I'm not selling you on, a quartz product that is $130 a square foot because I'm going to make more money. It's because that's what looks good with the rest of the selections and what you're telling me you like. So there's a different trust that I can develop with the customer where they're going to be more willing to divulge what their budgets are, what they like, what they don't like, what they I just think that it ends up being a little bit more like they're less guarded with us,
Right.
which is what it should be. And that makes it more enjoyable because then they can at least have honest conversations about saying, I just can't spend this kind of money on this room, or, I really want to spend my money in my kitchen and my master, so there's way more flexibility that I have in trying to working through budgets versus somebody who might be like an employee of the builder who may or may not even be like, I'm not saying that all of them are benefiting from that, but at least there's that separation.
Right. So let's move a little bit forward now because I want to talk about another aspect of this, which I think has developed and is continuing to develop and is an interesting. So that's the client builder type relationship. But now when we're looking at the types of communities that you're supporting, you're not just supporting custom, like full big custom builders. You are supporting them for certain, but you're also supporting community builders. And
Yes.
by doing both, while there's this underlying Z Domus process, it has to be tweaked because one is about volume and one maybe is more about depth, right? Because you're having to choose at a deeper level or a higher level more intensely than some of the others that maybe have a little bit more standard packages or, here are some of the options that you can choose from. So I want to talk for a minute about the differences, some of the differences between those two kind of models, because each of them you could set up a business model doing what you do for either one of those independently and only work on communities or only work on custom. You have chosen, at least for right now, to have kind of arms of your business that focus on both. So you have some of your designers that are focused a little bit more on the custom building side, and some that have a specialty more on the community side. And so let's talk about the differences between the two, because then I want to talk about the differences between the designers that work on those, because or the skill set of the designers, right? Because there is a difference in the way that we would approach trying to get 50 houses done in a time frame versus 3 houses done in the same time frame. So talk first and share with us, Rose, about how you have made the decision, and maybe some of the likes and the I won't say likes and dislikes, the how they're alike and how they're different from those two aspects.
Yeah, so it's interesting because obviously my background, I've done both. So I've worked for community builders and then custom. And my life in Pennsylvania has been custom home building. So I definitely, actually my first client did both. I think why I initially started, because I was like, I can do both because I know both. And then the custom part of the business actually grew faster, less volume, but higher end homes, again, more depth. Like there's the longer relationships in with each client. And then more recently, the community level communities have increased as well. So there's definitely a different skill set and a different approach to design. There's a lot of when we go into a community, let's say there's 60 homes in the community, there's a lot of design work that we work with the builders in the beginning to create the standards, to create the packages, to create options for everybody, and programs within different manufacturers so that we can offer, and we try to, at least with every builder, kind of create like whatever their identity is. We want to be able to show it in whatever we offer as packages, so that it's not like every builder is showing the same base package. Like, so they're all a little different. We have this one builder that we work with who's the style, like you go on their website and it's modern farmhouse like that. It black windows, white siding, black roof, like it's chrome and matte black, and like that's their look. So there's no way that we're going to not introduce something like that in the packages that we offer. Otherwise, it totally disconnects with their image. So there's a lot of work in the beginning before we even meet a client. And then when we meet with each client, the relationship is much shorter. They come to my showroom, they come maybe 2 or 3 times, they get all their selections done. I have all of the samples here that they can touch and feel and make sure that they enjoy. And there's very little outside of that. So we actually enjoy that process too, just because, how many different ways can we combine this to make it feel fresh and different. So that's one, and it's much more volume in that case. The relationship is, again, only probably a couple weeks old, and then we get the full package of everything all at once and hand it off to the builder.
Because there are a lot of decisions that are already made in those community builds. So then it's like you said, it's a smaller version of selections. They're kind of limited because you've already done the pre-work to figure out what goes well, what's within the budget of the home, that type of thing, and they make their selections. So how does that compare to the more, I know, but share with us, how does that compare to the more custom? I'm sure it's custom, not more than 2 meetings in 3 weeks, right?
Yeah. Those meetings can be, there's probably 10 meetings that are your initial meetings with them, like initial meetings with a vendor of some sort. And then there's like all the meetings in between. So the relationship is much longer. The relationship with the builder is much longer with each client too. So the build process is longer. And the expectation is not that you're going to get everything done before they put a shovel in the ground. So
Right.
you are designing the home as the home is being built and obviously with timelines in mind. But there is way more, there's actually like you can't assume anything in those cases because every decision needs to be thought through. I mean, some decisions are really easy, but like there's no assumption that they're going to want, even that like the architect's plan is exactly what they wanted, so there's a lot of different discussions like that. So it definitely is more relationship driven in that, in those builds than maybe even in the community side, because it's less of a time frame.
So let's talk for a minute then about, so I'm certain, and we don't have to get into this, but there are different pricing models for those two. Like you're not going to have the same pricing model to do a community build as you would a custom build. I mean, we all know that. All right. So let's talk though, in our last little bit of time together about the difference in skill set to manage those. I know that you did some predictive index work on these positions with, I think Eileen Hahn, and then you also, who's been on the podcast, I'll link some of her podcast on here, but so you worked with her to do the predictive index and to really look at the position of what is needed from a personality, a skill set, a natural ability to handle custom work versus community driven work. Tell us a little bit about what you found, just different needs to be able to support a really fast-paced, volume-driven work versus more detail, more time to handle it type work.
Yeah, so I think so for a designer who's going to do community design, there's a ton of emphasis on attention to detail because there's so much translation of information, the volume of information that needs to get transferred is fast and needs to be completed all at once. Otherwise, we could derail a construction time frame if we don't do that. So there was a ton of attention to detail, and probably less emphasis on extrovert, so less need to have relationship building, but at the same time, obviously I want somebody who's pleasant to speak.
You need a good communicator. It's just because it's so short, right? But because the time frame is so short, you're not building lasting BFF friendships,
right? And then, but that on the custom side is going to be more important because there is a level of relation, beyond your skill set of being able to know that these two things go well together. It's how you communicate the information to the customer so that they're not feeling overwhelmed by every decision that they're going to have to make. And it's a lot more, there's a lot more need for a relationship, whether professional or otherwise, that it just needs to be a good relationship, because there will be times where we call it it's decision fatigue. They just, at a certain point, if you're spending 2 years building your home, you're done. You don't want to make another decision. And there has to be that trust with your designer so that myself or any one of my employees could make that decision for you, knowing all the other decisions that we've made in the past. So there is, of course, still a need for attention to detail, just because of, being able to draw the rendering,
job, right?
Yeah. So that's always going to be something that's going to be a giant skill set that I look for, but probably more so in the community. That's probably my number one in the community. In the custom, it would be more of that relationship communication.
They also have to have, I would think, on the custom, a bit more of a calming effect.
Yes.
They've got to have that ability to soothe and to calm, because things are changing all the time. Like you said, you are managing the design while it's being designed. Whereas in the community side, many of the design decisions have already been made. There may be tweaks, but it's quicker, faster, and more limited. So there's you certainly have to have a calming skill, but not at the same way that you do with the decision fatigue and just the length of time that it takes to get through the build.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's so many more variables, especially if we're working with renovation. Like we could plan an entire kitchen with certain dimensions and they open up a wall and we can't do something. And you just have to have the adaptability to just sort of say, nope, we can do the same. Don't worry. You're not going to lose anything. We're just going to move around these couple things. And, the overall, function of your kitchen or whatever it might be is not going to be affected, and I think it gives them comfort that we've probably seen a lot of it where we were able to just sort of switch gears and make it work again. We're recently finding a lot in the custom where we have to find alternatives because of material delays. So we're doing a lot of
reselects probably.
Selections. There's a ton of back orders or even just dropped lines as we get to the end of the year that we need to work through. And you have to be that person where a customer understand like that. You have to be able to be the person where you can help them make that decision rather than them feeling like they've lost something because they didn't get the original design that they were hoping for.
So that brings me to one other point. Have you addressed your pricing to allow for all the reselects and all the rework and all the going back that COVID is now creating? Or is that something that you're looking to do as you move in? Because that's not going to stop, right? I think we're going to see this going on. And that's why it costs more now, not just materials, but to go back and reselect. Like if your pricing was flat fee based on doing it, and now you're having to go back and rework, and we see that might happen, how are you taking that into account going forward?
So I would say that it's probably been something that over the last 6 weeks has been like, we feel it more. So I have not adjusted anything, but as I'm looking into 2021, I'm definitely considering it. I've also had conversations with builders about saying that at this point, alternatives might not be the answer either. Like I'm running out of options for alternatives too.
Right. So, at some point we have to wait.
Yeah. At some point, like, I literally just had one before I went on Zoom with you that it's just at some point, like they're going to sacrifice something if I talk to them about a change and we're just going to have to wait. So I'm starting to have those type of conversations before the conversation is, okay, well, if you're going to ask us to have all these alternatives, then we're going to need to get paid for that extra time. So right. I've sort of started the groundworks of saying that, I'm happy to choose, if polished nickel faucet's not available and in one company and I can get another one, I'm happy to have that quick right. turnaround. Like that's easy. But when we're reselecting hardwoods and tiles and like, that's like huge color scheme differences that will affect and take a lot more consideration than just, let's just switch out a product.
Right.
And I am starting to have those conversations with those builders that are
that's outside of scope.
Yeah. That this is creating a lot more work and a lot more rework for us. And honestly, I think I approach it sometimes about and it's the truth. I don't want the customers to continue to feel like they're sacrificing something or they're losing something when they make an alternative. So if I don't feel comfortable that the alternative is what they want, I don't want to offer that as something.
Right.
So
especially not after a 2-year build and then you get it and then you get in and go, well, we had to go ahead and finish the house, but it's nothing that we wanted. Like nobody wants to feel that way.
Nobody wants that. Like there's too much at stake. And for a lot of these people, community or custom, these are their dream houses. These are the houses that they've stayed up at night going on Pinterest and housed to look at. Like they've done all their research on that stuff. And, for a 1 week delay, it might be worth it.
Or even a 1 month delay in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. So Rose, as your business has grown and it moved from more than just Rose to Rose and a team, and we still have room to grow and move as you desire, what are you doing to keep your company in a profitable status? Like, and not just money, right? But we're talking about profitability of everything, of selections, of choices, of working. What do you look at, and how are you focusing on making sure that your business stays healthy?
So to take your phrase, I'm trying to make sure that the right butt's in the right seat.
Yep.
So I do a lot of analysis of whether or not I've positioned everybody and where they can succeed and where they can grow. I definitely, probably more so this year than other years, have looked at pricing structure just to make sure, because we do deal with so many, the volume versus non-volume, and making sure we're accounting for time. So I'm spending a lot more time asking my designers to track their time so I can get a better sense of how we should be billing, especially for future builders.
Right.
I have been probably, again, in the last maybe month and a half, 2 months, have had a lot of opportunities come to us in terms of new clients. We've been selective in who we, present proposals to and who we kind of pursue. But it's also with the idea of, because I have those two sides of the business, I need to just make sure that we can manage that, and I can manage that. So
Right.
it's creating better systems to make sure, I'm looking to, we're working together about whether or not it's time to think about a hire again. So I don't want just hiring somebody to be the solution, because that's where I'm not going to be profitable. So
Right.
I think before I do that, again, it's just more working on the systems that we're continuing to work on to see if there are any automated processes that can be taken care of before I consider that there's another person in here. But I put a lot of weight on myself to make sure that my employees have a healthy work environment. They know that they have a job. So I don't take that lightly at all. So there's a lot of self-reflection in the decisions that I make for future builds, that I don't overwork or overcommit to something that we can't deliver.
Yeah, you do a really good job of caring for your employees. You really do. I've been very impressed with your thoughtfulness as the emails we get back and forth where you'll, Michele, here's my brain dump. Oh, Michele, I love them. I love your brain dumps. But
they're my favorite. 11 p.m. Oh my gosh, Michele, what do I do now?
But I will say this, my whole aim with intent, everything I talk about is ownership, intention. Profit doesn't happen by accident. It's about taking the step to sit and look at it. And you do that. You don't just look at, I think the thing I love is you have a very, I guess maybe it's the word circumspective. You look around the entire thing. So you're looking at how to help your employees, how to manage your employees, how they work together, company culture. We've had those conversations. You're looking at, so that would be like what I would consider profitability of employees in workspace, right? You strive to make it a healthy place for people to come. They're spending a lot of time there. You have focused a lot on, we've dug into your numbers, and it's time to dig into them some more and to really look at, as we project forward, what does this look like in the new landscape of how we're working and selecting and doing these things? Are we making the money we need to make in the way that we need to make it? Is this still good, or do we need to tweak it? We should all be doing that. You are also very good, like you said, of looking at yourself. How do I manage? How am I leading? What am I putting forth? And, one of my big goals for you is to give you a little bit more personal time. We're still working on that. We're still working on that. And lastly,
on the couch for a little bit. Yeah.
Say that again.
I said, just to be able to sit on the couch for an hour.
Yes. And do nothing. I want you twiddling your thumbs. But I'll say one of the other really exciting aspects of what you've created, the reputation you have, and the work that you've put out, Rose, is that there are lots of opportunities coming your way. and diverse opportunities coming your way. And so I'm seeing that from a lot of my designers, that opportunities are now presenting themselves, maybe different things than they thought of before. And so I also really appreciate your attention to not just jumping. I always say that we want to say the best yes, not yes to just anything, to your point. And I love how you're being very reflective and careful in even what you say yes to, because the opportunities are there, but they may not all be yours.
Yeah. And that's difficult for me, because I just, I just want to be able to help like all these people. Like I don't mean that to be like, whatever, but it's just, I want to be able to do this. It's just that, like, I don't want to do it if I can't 100% know that I have everything behind it to support whatever I say yes to, because we'll fall flat on our face. And I don't want that to be, I don't want that to be the reputation, for sure.
That's the same thing that I do, I think, in my business, when I'm looking at, like, you help people design homes and design their living spaces. I help people design their business. And it's that same kind of thing. I don't want to work with thousands of people that I can't manage and help. I would rather work with smaller amounts of people where I can go deep and really give them, the assistance. And just like you were looking for somebody to kind of, all right, I just need to get this out and have somebody like Michele, I'm on the right track. Where am I going here? That's the same thing your clients are asking you and your team to do for them. They're saying, I like these things. Do they go together? Right? We're doing the same things. We all are in our businesses. And so that's part of growing, is figuring out what is your bandwidth, and not just bandwidth to serve the client, but the minute you don't serve the client, you're not serving Rose and you're not serving your team. Right. So, well, I have loved this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Just a different approach of how to look at design. We didn't even touch on the fact that you offer furnishings plans and things like that, in some cases going forward. But the primary focus is on that builder support. Which then also becomes client support. And I love that. So thank you for sharing the nuances of that, a different way of approaching interior design, from the build all the way up. And then even just the business model, I think, is so fabulous. And so I really just appreciate you letting us dig into that a little bit.
Thanks, Michele. I can't do it without you.
Well, you were already doing it without me.
Yeah.
We're just
making it tweaking it, making it better.
Making it better, and shooting for the stars. So we might just have a little bit different aim than when you first, because I think we've hired a few of these people since we've been together.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's all of them.
I think so. Yeah. I think you came to me and you had a part-time, and now we got a staff of 4 and are looking for more, but it's working and you're doing a great job. And that's the thing. I remember you saying to me, I need to hire, I need to grow, I need to know what the right person is and the next person, but I need to know that I can afford it. And I need to know that I can keep them. I don't want to hire and then have to let somebody go because I wasn't prepared. So help me get prepared so that I can do it. And so you've done a great job. You really have. You're welcome. Well, you have a great day, and thank you again for sharing.
Thank you. You too.
Rose, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey and pulling back the curtains a bit so that we could see the detail behind the execution of your business model. Building businesses is not easy. And while we all have to do things that are not our best strengths sometimes, when we find that thing that we love and where we will excel, really focusing on it. Design takes many forms. I would love to assist you in building your unique strengths and values into your business model. Check out our Work With Me page at scarletthreadconsulting.com and then sign up for a discovery call. Let my team and I help you streamline and move forward faster than you would be able to do alone. Profit is a choice, and it doesn't happen by accident.